Michael Saylor just pulled off what no one thought was possible. He's going to get Bitcoin exposure into the $61 trillion S&P 500, and it's going to accelerate Bitcoin's growth and potentially get it to $1 million here very quickly. I'm going to break down all of that math and why I believe this move from Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy is potentially one of the biggest in Bitcoin's history. Now, first, let's dive into Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy joining the elite with a $14 billion windfall by joining that Russell 200. So it's likely to register an unrealized gain of about $14 billion this quarter. That's right. I didn't stutter on that one. $14 billion. This will put it as one of the most profitable companies in the world. There's only about 10 or so US multinational operating companies that are going to exceed $10 billion in a single quarter. So this is going to be absolutely monumental, not just for Bitcoin, MicroStrategy, and everything else, but for the Bitcoin on the balance sheet craze that we've been seeing. We've seen hundreds of companies now start to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and we're going to go into some of those here later today. But the FASB accounting has absolutely changed the game. So this unrealized profit that now MicroStrategy has faced, what they're doing, it's going to be turning a lot of heads, because now it's not just, hey, you know what, this is cute, they're putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet, yada, yada, yada. No, there's 10 companies that are going to post the profit that Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy are going to post. And so they've been doing this, and, you know, they've got the strategy B, how much Bitcoin per share, the MNAV. You guys have heard of all of these different types of metrics now. But the interesting aspect is essentially they're bringing the new financial framework in Bitcoin and turning it into the old financial framework of, you know, the traditional business cycles. And so putting it on the balance sheet is absolutely changing the game. And so I always like to show up my friend punter Jeff Walton, friend of the program. He's been on the show before, but MSTR is now ranked the 93rd largest company in the US by market cap. It jumped Nike, you might have heard of it, and one other company this week. And it's saying, hey, digital capital is now chasing the analog devices. So it's day 3 of qualifying for that S&P 500. It's the 11th largest publicly traded equity by volume. Now, punter Jeff here is pointing out an extremely important fact. It's the 93rd largest company by market cap, but it's the 11th by trading volume, which means it attracts a ton of attention from everybody. So a company that just got into the top 100 by market cap is now being traded similarly to the Mag 7. And that's all because of the Bitcoin on the balance sheet. And so what's going to happen? It's going to continue to go and go and go, especially when Bitcoin is going to continue to rocket up. But the biggest thing is that it's potentially going to join the S&P 500. Now, the S&P 500 has a ton of passive flows. So your retirement accounts, pension funds, you name it, majority of people have some sort of exposure to the S&P 500, whether it's through some of these means. And financial advisors just feel very comfortable now telling their clients, hey, you guys should invest in the S&P 500. It's been around for a while. It's 500 companies. So you don't have just MicroStrategy where you see the massive amounts of volatility. No. You have 500 other companies. But if you really break it down and look at the S&P 500 as a whole, it's the Mag 7 and maybe soon to be MicroStrategy and everybody else. They've been essentially carrying the entire stock market, which has led to a lot of fluff in the market. But let's get back to the point here. The FASB, the Financial Accounting Standards, this absolutely changed the game. And this is why we're starting to see all of these Bitcoin treasury companies now start to come alive. So this fair value accounting rule, or the FASB as I like to call it, began on December 15th, 2024. At that time, we essentially just had MicroStrategy as the only company to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet. Well, now we have 255 entities, 141 publicly traded companies putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and that goes up every single quarter. And now that MicroStrategy could potentially have some passive equity inflows, and then MicroStrategy will continue to do the MicroStrategy Bitcoin flywheel, as I always like to call it out. And for those of you guys who come here a lot, you know I like to show this graphic because I think it's one of the best that essentially explains what MSTR has done and the beauty behind it. And the reality is this has been refined. But when Michael Saylor started buying Bitcoin just 4 years ago, this is the strategy, or the strategy B now that he's using, where essentially he's going to issue debt to buy Bitcoin. Bitcoin's price will increase. MSTR's market cap will increase. And then the weight in indices. So that's a big one right here. The weight in the S&P 500 potentially would increase. And then, you know, the flywheel starts. MSTR will issue more equity to buy Bitcoin. Bitcoin increases. MicroStrategy's market cap increases. And the weight in the indices will continue to increase. And thus the flywheel. So the S&P 500 is a huge deal strictly because of the amount of the passive inflows. So it takes to the amount of money in the investment, ETFs, index funds. Everybody's just kind of putting in the S&P 500 and not really thinking too much of it. But the interesting thing is we've already had Coinbase now join the S&P 500 this year, and everybody's saying, oh, this was a huge symbolic milestone for the crypto industry and everything like that. But it's not there yet, right? I think the bigger question, or the bigger point of this entire article here, is that the Wells Fargo CEO is saying the quiet parts out loud. He literally is saying strategy. It's the pioneer in using equity markets to fund a Bitcoin treasury. It's setting these sights on the $300 trillion global bond market with products like STRK and STRF. And people, even if they're haters of Bitcoin, like Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan, I mean, you guys know I love to show this chart. I mean, they've just exponentially started buying more and more MSTR shares. I mean, they went from, what is it here, 58.7 shares held times 1,000 to now 1,123.92. So that is just a dramatic increase. And it's all because of what the Wells Fargo CEO is saying here. Jamie Dimon has said the bond market is screwed, and Bitcoin and MSTR are now starting to take over the bond market. So Jamie Dimon sees that. But I think the interesting aspect is, what does this all mean for Bitcoin and the Bitcoin price action? You know, we see MSTR continue to buy Bitcoin literally every single Monday. Saylor will tweet out probably tomorrow on Sunday, hey, there needs to be more orange on the Saylor buy tracker. So they will probably subsequently announce another buy here on Monday. It's just, how much are they going to buy, right? So this is what the S&P 500 helps with. They can just essentially buy more and more. But with all of these companies and governments and now people coming in, I think the unique aspect of Bitcoin is that it has this big multiplier effect. Now, for those of you guys who haven't heard me talk about it, the multiplier effect is essentially how much money is put in and what is the subsequent result of what would happen to the market cap. So this is from our friends over at Gemini, but they say the short-term impact can range from near zero to 25x on high volatile periods. But on average, the short-term multiplier effect is about 8. So that means about $1 of capital would increase the market cap by about 8. So if we're sitting back and looking here, hey, Bitcoin is at $2.16 trillion market cap when it's sitting here at 108,000. So if we wanted to divide that by 8, how many dollars would we need to essentially double Bitcoin at this point in time? So this is $270 billion. Okay, so let's put that into some perspective here, because $270 billion isn't exactly a huge amount. but it is a decent, right? So as it stands right now, we've had a bunch of companies announce that they are buying Bitcoin and putting it on the balance sheet. This was a great thread, and it was retweeted by Michael Saylor, but there's been over 250 announcements of companies buying Bitcoin and putting it on the balance sheet. That equates to about 68,000 Bitcoin. So there's 21 new treasuries, 47 future treasuries planning to buy billions of worth, 42 companies, 43 plans to buy more, and billions raised already. So 22 additional treasury related disclosures, right? So there's a bunch of companies already starting to come in. So how much is this, right? Right there, if there's 61,309 Bitcoin, that's approximately 6.6 billion that have just been announced within the past couple of weeks when this treasury craze has gone on. So remember, we're still trying to get to that 270 billion mark. So we're still a decent way away from that with that. But Michael Saylor posting a $14 billion in profit with this. He's going to potentially have more equity to issue. And even if we don't look at what Michael Saylor's doing, we'll look at the Grok estimates of over 31 billion in capital flow into Strategy during the next 6 months following the potential of an S&P 500 inclusion. So we had 6 billion in announcements strictly from all of these different companies, but we all know MSTR is that big dog, right? It's the biggest kid on the block. And so it has 15 billion off the jump in September. This is what Grok is estimating, not us, right? Not me, who's extremely bullish with all of this going on. But there's a total estimate of 31.5 billion. And that's just from a single company in over a 6-month period. So we could see this start to, really take off. And then if you look at the ETFs, we haven't even talked about the ETF inflows just yet, right? Because not only are we having companies start to FOMO into Bitcoin, we have ETFs, we have governments, which we'll get into in a second, but the amount of buying that is on here is astronomical. So if we look at the ETF inflows, they were obliterated on April 22nd because you just see there's 912 million ETF inflows, which was 500 times the daily average. But, when FOMO starts to set in, those are the start of the things that we start to see, right? Is that, hey, these ETFs, 407 million, marking the 16th straight day of growth. So let's say 400 million times 30, right? Because that would make 1 month. That's 12 billion right there just from the ETF buying. That doesn't even count on FOMO. Retail hasn't even really shown up on this cycle just yet. So that's another 12 billion. And that's just in a single month as well. And so when you start to see these things add up, you guys realize that there's just billions of dollars worth of buying power on the sidelines, and it's going to continue to rise up. And then now on top of it, we have governments starting to come in and continue to buy Bitcoin. The United States has talked about using tax efficient strategies to buy Bitcoin. They haven't done it yet, but there's a lot of smart people in the White House who are thinking about it, right? So if there's a lot of smart people thinking about it, and there's other governments that are already buying Bitcoin, well, this number that is just 2.3% of all the Bitcoin is going to accelerate as well. So as of April 25, governments hold nearly 500,000 Bitcoin, approximating to 2.3 of the total supply. But it was a decrease because some governments sold off. But governments like El Salvador and Kingdom of Bhutan, which are just tiny guys, are buying Bitcoin and continuing to buy Bitcoin. So we see the U.S. potentially have sold off some. China, allegedly flat. There was rumors that they sold, but the big drop was Germany. Germany sold off essentially all of their Bitcoin, right? So who knows? They'll probably regret that decision here pretty soon. I wouldn't doubt that. And I'm going to give you guys some sats here in a minute, but let's check what's going on in the chat. We've got the legend McLovin. What is going on? Happy 4th of July to all my fellow Americans out there. Hope you guys had fun. I had a little bit too much fun last night. But, you know, we live and you learn. What's going on, Johnny and Knox Bill? We got some other people in the chat, so keep on blowing that up. But regardless, we're starting to see Kingdom of Bhutan and some of these other countries really start to get up, right? And mine Bitcoin. So I don't even think we've seen the global hash wars that Max Kaiser has described ad nauseum that we're going to start to see take off. I don't think we're even there yet in this cycle. Where we are is we're just seeing, hey, the Kingdom of Bhutan, they're a small little guy, but where is the Kingdom of Bhutan? I know I've shown you guys this map before, but let's pull this up on Google Maps where the Kingdom of Bhutan is, because it is pretty close to the second largest economy in the world in China. It's literally a border. So we got Kingdom of Bhutan right here. And then we've got China, obviously, right here. So the Kingdom of Bhutan, China's neighbor. We've got Hong Kong pretty close as well. And they've got the two countries, one system. You know, they're all keeping an eye, especially on this little guy here. If he starts to become an economic power because of what they're doing here, where they're seeing mining millions of Bitcoin. And then you see El Salvador, right? El Salvador has really started to crank things up in the buying power as well. I mean, they utilize the IMF loan to start buying not just one, not just two, but 11 Bitcoin on a daily basis. They've slowed that down to just one, but still, it's a small government, and they're buying one Bitcoin every single day. So that adds up to that buying pressure. And you guys know I love to show this chart as well, the number of Bitcoin on exchanges, because that is just coming off at a rapid pace. We've got just about 2 million Bitcoin on exchanges at this point in time. Let's see. Yeah, 2.14 billion or million Bitcoin on exchanges. And that number, you can see, it just keeps on going down. A lot of people are starting to take Bitcoin off an exchange. And I always encourage you guys to hold it in self-custody. And that's why I've partnered with my friends over at the Bitcoin Well. They're absolute legends. You guys can go to bitcoinwell.com/greencandle. And you guys can play the wishing well, which we're going to play today. So get your Lightning wallets ready, because we are going to give you guys some free sats. But if you don't get these free sats from here, if somebody in the chat beats you, if McLovin or Knox Bill or Chris going on here in the chat, if one of these guys beat you to it, you could go to bitcoinwell.com/greencandle. You could sign up. You'll get 500 wishing well tokens, which is one spin for 1 million sats. And then you buy a little bit of Bitcoin. So then, boom, you sign up, you buy Bitcoin. You literally get 2 chances to win 1 million sats. And then if you're hitting that subscribe button with the bell notification, you get a chance to win 1 million sats every time you come to a Green Candle live chat. So we've got 507 sats straight to your dome piece. So go ahead and make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button. But if you missed it, like I said, bitcoinwell.com/greencandle. And I know this is a daunting task to hold Bitcoin in cold storage, to go through that, right? To make sure everything's safe. So this is why I partnered with my friends over at the Bitcoin Way. They can literally help you with everything from self-sovereignty, right? So if you want to get a Plan B passport, you want to make sure that everything is all fine and dandy. They've got 25 years in cybersecurity experience. They've got endless experience, relatability of what they've all done. And they can help you do that. So I know you guys tell me in the chat I look like a funeral director in this suit over here, but it's just the death of fiat. So you guys go book yourself a free 30-minute consultation to see if the boys over at the Bitcoin Way can help you, because we're seeing Bitcoin sitting at 108,000. And it seems like nobody's really talking about it. It's all quiet on the Western Front over here. Why do you guys think that is? Well, it's because we've got all these treasury companies. We don't see a giant push up just yet. But, you know, what we're seeing, right, is the amount of the FASB change, what that meant for Bitcoin, right? let's look at this list here of these Bitcoin publicly traded company or Bitcoin treasury companies. 21, the number 3 holder, that didn't exist a month ago, right? So Semlar Scientific, I had Eric Semlar on the podcast. We're going to be releasing that soon. So be sure to be looking out for that. Make sure you guys are hitting the subscribe button for that. But a lot of these companies, they're not just like Bitcoin mining companies that are keeping Bitcoin on the balance sheet. And if you go down and you look, they keep on buying. You see all of these graphs are just up and to the right. MicroStrategy, of course, they've got nearly 600,000 coins. Man, are they going to get to 1 million? Probably pretty soon. I wouldn't doubt it. In the next couple of years, if we see MSTR having a Nakamoto, right? Having a Satoshi, 1 million Bitcoin. And Michael Saylor becoming one of the most powerful guys in the world, if he's not already. I mean, because the passive inflows, the S&P 500, the amount that is going to unlock for them is going to be insane. And then on top of it, we've got the Bitcoin multiplier effect, where we're going to see more of these companies start to FOMO into Bitcoin. And so it's not going to take long for Bitcoin to double at that point. I mean, I lined out the billions worth of net inflows that we're going to see. But on top of it, you know, we're going to start to see a ton of more buying coming on in, right? So the long-term multiplier effect, it's just going to keep going up. The FOMO is going to settle in. And then we've got Bitcoin that literally didn't exist 16 years ago to now the 7th largest asset ever. And it's bumped back and forth with Google, just depending on the day. So it's the 6th or 7th largest asset ever, and it didn't exist 16 years ago. You literally can't say that about anything else on here. Meta, nope. Google's been around forever. Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, NVIDIA just kind of rose on the scene. But either way, all of these guys, they've been companies for a long time. And obviously gold and silver have been those stores of values forever. And so everybody's starting to flock towards Bitcoin. And we're starting to see the amount of buying power just accelerate. More of these Bitcoin treasury companies starting to come on. And we've got a bunch of you guys in the chat, so I appreciate you guys all there. Tim is asking, did they get S&P 500 inclusion? Not yet, but they're qualifying based on what we have, right? Because they have this 14 billion in profit, as profitable as JP Morgan. That is coming soon because Grok is estimating that it would be effective September 19th this year because of the multiple days that it could qualify for the S&P 500. Look at this. Just third day doing it. This is from my friend Punter Jeff. Third day doing it. It jumped Nike, and it's getting traded like the 11th largest publicly traded company in the world. So it's going to start. And once more of these trading days, it's going to be day 4 there on Monday. Obviously, we had the holiday, the 4th of July, the other day. So it's going to continue to go up. We got Dingo Booty. What is going on, man? BTC is away. Max with the green candle. Yes, sir. So we're going to start to see this. Michael Saylor potentially is going to be tweeting out that Saylor tracker here tomorrow. So I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on it. And I hope you guys have a great holiday weekend. Make sure you're smoking that like Cheech and Chong and hitting that subscribe button, telling a friend to tell a friend, and I'll catch you guys all at the next one.